All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we'll talk about Art Rooney II's comments on the Steelers offseason. So, um, he was asked at the annual league meeting about the offseason, and this is what he said about the changes that the Steelers have made this offseason, particularly at quarterback. So, this is via the Pittsburgh Tribune Review. He said, "Every year we try to figure out how we get better, and how do we get better as quickly as possible. I think that's the bottom line. Try to get better as quickly as possible." He also said, "I like where we are so far. The draft is the next priority. We have to do good with the draft." All right, so pretty short. I thought there was another quote in the article here that I have, but yeah, because what the Steelers did this offseason was a lot of people say is un-Steeler-like because they pulled the plug on Kenny Pickett. They went out, they signed Russell Wilson, and then they traded for Justin Fields. And between that and you go back to Ben Roethlisberger retiring and all the stuff with Matt Canada, the Steelers are not the organization where they just will fire people or they will get rid of people. They kind of keep people, and those people, those players, those coaches, they kind of overstay their welcome. Now, Ben Roethlisberger is a Hall of Famer. There's no question about it. But, the last couple of seasons of Big Ben, it wasn't great. It wasn't great. And now the Steelers did end up making the playoffs, but they didn't win a playoff game. In 2020, the Browns, were up 28-0 in the first quarter. And then you had them go up against the Chiefs in Arrowhead, and that game really wasn't. I mean, the Steelers were winning that game at one point because of, the Chiefs lollygagging, and T.J.Watt scored a touchdown, and that put the Steelers up 7-0. And you thought, oh wow, maybe the Chiefs ended up winning that game, which we all figured. The Steelers haven't won a playoff game since 2016, and oddly enough, that was in Arrowhead, but that was when Alex Smith was the quarterback and Chris Boswell kicked 6 field goals. But yeah, Ben Roethlisberger was not great the last couple of seasons. You saw the decline was there, but the Steelers, they wanted, to at least, put together one more run with Big Ben, but it just wasn't going to happen. So they did eventually say, all right, we want to go in a different direction, and it was a couple of years too late, a lot of Steelers fans would say. But that ended up happening. But then you got the stuff with Matt Canada. And Steelers fans just were begging the Steelers to let go of him. And eventually they did do that. But it just took a long time for them to finally do it. And eventually they did. But they really did pull the plug on Kenny Pickett. They pulled it very fast. And I didn't expect it. I thought that you were going to have him, Mason Rudolph, compete to be the starters next season, and another veteran quarterback was going to come in. And they did sign Russell Wilson, but then it just things just unraveled there, and Kenny Pickett, wanted out, and they ended up trading him to Philadelphia, where he's going to be a backup, and that might be what he ends up being for the rest of his career. But we'll see. But what the Steelers did, like I said, was un-Steeler-like. They made changes. They bring in Russell Wilson on a cheap deal, and then they get Justin Fields for basically nothing. I mean, at most it's going to be a 4th-round pick. So the quarterback room is very different. Then they go out and they sign Patrick Queen to add to the linebacker core. I like what the Steelers did this offseason. They're not spending a ton of money on a veteran quarterback. They traded for Justin Fields. And again, at most it's going to be a 4th-round pick. I like what they did. And they're probably going to end up going receiver in the draft. I was reading that that's probably what they're going to end up doing because they did trade Deontay Johnson. I mean, you're going to have to replace him. I mean, they did bring in Van Jefferson, but Van Jefferson is not, a star wide receiver by any means. I mean, it's for depth. So they're going to end up drafting a receiver, and you got a nice 1-2 duo with Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris. So, and you got George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth. I listen. the Steelers got playmakers on both sides of the ball. And then, of course, you got the quarterback on the defense, T.J.Watt. I mean, the Steelers' defense is going to be good. But, yeah, the quarterback room is different. What the Steelers did this offseason was different. And, again, I think they're going to be a team that's going to be in the thick of it. Now, in the grand scheme of things, what can the Steelers do? Well, I think they could definitely make the playoffs. Now, can they win a playoff game is the question. Because, again, like I said, the last time they won a playoff game was in Arrowhead, and it was the year before Patrick Mahomes was drafted. Well, I mean, the playoff game took place in 2017, but you get what I mean. That was the last time they won a playoff game. It has been a long time. And this is a big year for them. And I get it. Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season, and I don't expect that. Even in this loaded division that the Steelers play in, I don't expect them to finish with a losing record because it just doesn't happen. But I think we've gotten to a point where we praise Mike Tomlin for the great job that he's done. Like, they made the playoffs with Mason Rudolph. They were able to right the ship and win their last three, make it to the playoffs. And, yeah, they lost by, a couple scores to the Bills. But at one point, it was a one-score game. They were competitive in that game. Look, they were able to backdoor into the playoffs in 2021 with Big Ben, his final season, when it looked like it wasn't going to happen. Like, we're praising Mike Tomlin. Like, you finished 9-8 after they started off 3-6 or 3-7, whatever their record was when Kenny Pickett took over as the starter. Like, we praise Mike Tomlin for the job that he's done, and yeah, rightfully so. But at some point, we also got to say, you got to win some playoff games. It's been a while. It has been a long time. And the Steelers, they have to do that in 2024. Now, again, I look at this team, if everything goes right, if Russ has another 26 touchdowns to 8 interception season, then, yeah, the Steelers, they could probably get to the playoffs and at least win a playoff game. At least one playoff game. Get to the second round. But I don't know. It's just you playing a gauntlet of a division, a gauntlet of a conference. It's just so tough. Again, got to see the Bengals healthy. Said that in the last segment. The Browns, listen, they brought in Tyler Huntley. They still have DTR. Deshaun Watson's coming back. I mean, we'll see what ends up. We got to see if Deshaun Watson's healthy. That's the main thing, and I saw something that said Nick Chubb is going to start ramping up as well. So hopefully he's back by week 1. And we'll see if the Browns end up playing in Brazil, because it's a possibility. It's coming down to supposedly either them or the Packers. So, yeah, you got that division. And again, the Ravens, they bring in Derrick Henry. Lamar Jackson was relatively healthy last year. So, we'll see what happens there, if they could repeat that. And then again, you got everybody else. The AFC South is more competitive. The AFC East, you got the Bills, you got the Dolphins, and we'll see if with the healthy Rodgers and the moves they made, are the Jets going to be the team that we thought they were going to be in 2023 with the healthy Rodgers? And then you got the Chiefs out in the AFC West, who are in a tier of their own. It's just, there's so many teams. It's going to be, they're going to be duking it out for those wild card spots. A lot of teams. And the Steelers, listen, they found a way to make it in. And that was with Mason Rudolph at quarterback. Now you got Russell Wilson. Now you got Justin Fields. I mean, again, is Justin Fields great? Well, he hasn't really shown that. He's shown that he's a great playmaker with his legs, but in terms of a thrower, a passer, that's something that needs to be worked on. And Russell Wilson has not been the same player since he left Seattle. But I think with the Steelers and how they just have been able to find a way to get in, I think with these two guys, they should find a way in, or at least get close. But like I said, I think you have to get into the playoffs, and I think you have to win a playoff game. because at some point you might have to. I mean, I thought it was going to be this year or last year at one point because they lost to the Patriots and the Cardinals. How long is Mike Tomlin going to be the Steelers head coach without winning a playoff game? Again, he does a great job. I don't know how the Steelers do it, but they somehow find a way to finish with a winning record. They finished. What did they finish in 2019? 8-8. With the quarterbacks that they had at the time, Mason Rudolph again, and also Devlin Hodges. Those are your quarterbacks that year. And let me see. What the Steelers finished with in 2019? It was either 8-8 or 9-7. But that's what I mean, though. It's just like you sit there and you go, how are the Steelers able to do this? But so they did finish 8-8. At one point, it was like, wow, they might make the playoffs with, Devlin Hodges, but Duck Hodges, people called him. I got my dad a Duck Dodgers T-shirt, and it was a duck with Steelers logos and thing, like a Steelers headband or something. Because that was the quarterback at the time, Duck Hodges. But yeah, it's just if the Steelers are able to do that, I think they're going to find a way with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. But Russell Wilson right now is going to be the starter. Now, if he struggles, well, then Fields is going to be the next man up. So, and I think this will be good for Fields. He can kind of just sit behind Russ, get his mind right, learn the playbook, and then we'll see if the Steelers end up bringing him back. I think Fields is going to see some playing time, one way or another, but we'll see. But yeah, what the Steelers did this offseason, I think they had a good offseason. The other thing too is T.J.Watt's got to be healthy, because we see what happens when he gets hurt and he's not on the field. The Steelers' defense is just completely different. So, but we'll see what happens. The AFC North is the best division in the NFL. I think most people will agree with that. They're going to be beating each other up in 2024, and I'm looking forward to it because it's going to be a lot of fun. That division is, like I said, the best division in football. But like I said, I think it's really important that the Steelers got to make the playoffs and you got to win a playoff game. Show that you can do that because again, we praise Mike Tomlin. He does a great job. Somehow they find a way into the playoffs, but they can't do anything after that. And again, Russell Wilson is not the same player that he was in Seattle. If you were getting that, Russ, well, the Steelers are up there with the best teams in the AFC. Right now, I can't say that because we haven't seen that side of Russ. And I don't think we ever are going to see that again. So, but let me know what you guys think about the Steelers' offseason moves. How do you feel about them? Where do you see the Steelers amongst the teams in the AFC? Do you think the Steelers will make the playoffs in 2024? So before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is GSMCpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is GSMCpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we're going to talk about Brock Purdy and the future payday for him and how that will impact the 49ers. So that is what we'll talk about when we come back from our second break of the show. So with that being said, stick around and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.